What's going on, YouTube? This is the NCU podcast. I am your host, Noel, and we're here with another video today. And this is based on the topic and based on the new release trailer for Kraven the Hunter movie. And I have some speculatory theories that I want to bring to my fellow audience and subscribers, and I want to see what you guys think. But before we get into the video, if you guys don't mind, please liking the video, subscribing to the page, and hitting the notification bell. Also, share it with your friends. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Now, for those who don't know, Kraven the Hunter is I would say, well-known Spider-Man villain. Do I think he's as well-known as some of the things, or some of the villains such as Shocker, Rhino, Green Goblin, Dr. Ock? Not 100%. I know for majority of people who actually do follow Spider-Man, we know him as like one of the greatest and one of the best well-written Spider-Man villains that there is, especially of course the one famous comic that people usually refer to is Kraven's Last Hunt. But nevertheless, he is still, for those who don't necessarily follow the comics or know everything about Spider-Man to the T, he is a Spider-Man villain. Now, I'm not going to break down, I guess, every single power and ability of Kraven, more so because in the movies and in the more so the live action movies and films, a lot of that stuff ends up getting changed per se, just to fit however they are trying to write it. Like, one of the things I wasn't 100% expecting was that, especially in the trailer, that a lion's blood mixed with his, and all of a sudden that's how he ended up getting his powers. That I really wasn't expecting. But nevertheless, I want to see what they do with this. And of course, if you stay, of course, at the end of the trailer, you see that the villain, or the antagonist per se, that Kraven is coming after is the Rhino. Now, can't wait to see an actual Rhino appearance. We got teased of a quote-unquote Rhino appearance in the at the end of the Amazing Spider-Man 2 with Andrew Garfield, and we of course haven't seen him since, unless you of course play the video games. But with that being said, and also thinking about it, that this movie does seem like it's going for the gore aspect of everything. Like, we seen, Kraven just cutting off throats. He bit into one of the driver's nose and ripped it off and spit it towards the camera. So this movie is going to be bloody. Will that change closer to release? Will it go from a possible rated R to a PG-13? I don't know. Some of the gore and guts and blood going to be toned down. We don't know. But from trailer, it looked good and it looked promising. However, though, there is something that I did want to bring up to my audience, and the theory that I thought of per se, and just speculation of what's going on. With the last live action Sony movie being released, and I'm saying strictly Sony Spider-Man verse, that was released, it was Morbius. And that movie, for all intents and purposes, bombed. It is a walking meme. I mean, I don't know how many times you've heard it's Morbin time on the internet, but nevertheless, that movie is looked at as a joke. A lot of the story was bad. The fights were just mediocre. It just wasn't good, especially for being hyped and everything. And from those trailers, we saw that they had Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man picture in the background, but then also you had Tom Holland's Vulture character in the actual trailer too. So we're like, okay, what's going on? And of course, at the end of the Morbius movie, at the end credit scene, spoilers for those who may have not seen a Morbius film, you see that the Vulture that was in the MCU got transported over into the Sony universe, and he's talking about, oh, I want to build a team to go after Spider-Man. Now, my biggest thing thinking about that, and it's not really saying that because the Morbius movie was bad that Sony's gonna mess up the Kraven movie. I don't know, Going there with, of course, like I go on every movie, blind expectations and just knowledge based off of characters to see how they actually portray them. I know that a lot of stories, especially MCU and DC, they decide once they make these movies, they take aspects from the comics and they don't necessarily follow most of the comics. And that's most of the frustration I had with my last video. You should check it out, about the Flash movie. They went with the Flashpoint storyline, but they didn't really follow it. They just kind of did what they wanted with it. And some parts were good, some parts were really mediocre, and just wasn't necessarily the best interpretation of it. To me, some people actually, I've heard they enjoyed the movie, but to me, it wasn't the best interpretation. But with watching this trailer and just kind of sitting on it, that's why I didn't make a video the minute the trailer release. I wanted to sit and think about some things. Is Sony setting up a Sinister Six? Because again, we have Morbius at the end. Well, Morbius and Vulture at the end of the Morbius movie, where you're going to have Kraven and Rhino in this movie. And we're only missing 2 more people. And that's if you want to say that Venom could be a part of it. And it's got me really starting to think, is Sony going to at some point make a Sinister Six, and who are the other 2 members going to be? Are we going to get a Doc Ock? MCU has already used Mysterio and Vulture's already there. So unless we're going to start pulling, people from the Tobey Maguire films or the Andrew Garfield films, then who are the other 2 members that we haven't seen? At first, and this is also coming from the game, and by the way, for those who don't know, there is also a Spider-Man game releasing on PlayStation around the same time the Kraven movie comes out. And I don't believe that the movie and the game are going to be, identical, especially because in the game, we're going to get an introduction to Venom in the symbiote suit for Peter Parker. And that's Peter and Miles Morales in that game. So my biggest thought when it comes to this whole thing is just, who are we going with for our other 2 members? Because we've already seen Electro in Andrew Garfield's movie. We've seen Sandman, Tobey Maguire. We've seen Green Goblin, Tobey Maguire. Dr. Octopus, Tobey Maguire. We had Lizard in the Andrew Garfield films. And for the MCU, yes, Vulture is, I guess, possibly still in the Sonyverse. And if he is, then all we've had is Vulture and we've had Mysterio. Now, from what we see and what we know, Mysterio is dead. But if we're going based off of that, what other villains are we looking at that could potentially be there? Thinking about the Thinking about the Spider-Man PlayStation game, the first one, we could possibly get Mr. Negative if we're going with that version of the Sinister Six. We could technically get Scorpion, especially if we're going with Kraven. But my biggest thing is, are we setting the Sinister Six more so for the Sony universe? Or are we setting the Sinister Six for possibly being in the MCU? Now, No Way Home was kind of a soft introduction per se to the Sinister Six. Do I believe that they're going to try to really form a bigger Sinister Six for the MCU? No. More so because Sony and Marvel is technically renting and borrowing Spider-Man because of a deal that they have with Sony. Sony technically still owns all of the rights to Spider-Man, which also brings another question into mind. What Spider-Man are we getting? Now, of course, for the fans, after they've watched No Way Home, everybody was pushing and punching and saying, let's go Andrew Garfield. And the reason I can see that happening would more so be because you give Andrew Garfield his 3rd movie that people all of a sudden want now, because people weren't really feeling Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man at first. But also the way that Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man ended, you seen that they were in an office with the Sinister Six type, outfits and costumes. You've seen Dr. Octopus arms. You've seen the Rhino suit. And of course, we got a tease to the Rhino at the end. And we don't know who the Rhino actually is. Now, of course, I didn't go look up the cast for the movie because I kind of want to go in just blind for the most part. But again, we don't know who the Rhino is being played by unless you again go look up the cast. And that still has me wondering, are we going to get an Andrew Garfield Spider-Man? Is he going to reprise his role as Spider-Man for his third film? Because he's technically back in his universe. And we don't know where they're technically going with these villain movies. And another thought process that I have and thought when it comes to potentially having Spider-Man show up or Spider-Man being teased and hinted at is, of course, Miles Morales. Now, I say this more so because after Beyond the Spider-Verse, Sony is not making any more animated Miles movies. So, there is that room and speculation and chance that later on, if the Sinister Six comes out, let's say 3 years from now, then we have it so that you can have Miles in the movie. Whoever they play it, whoever they, portray it as, you have Miles in the movie. And that's who he faces, the Sinister Six. But also, I would think that more so because in Across the Spider-Verse, we seen that Donald Glover's, Childish Gambino's, he was in his Prowler actual costume. I know they said he wasn't a part of this universe. True, of course, he's live action. But there is a chance that he could also be potentially a Sinister Six member. As well as, again, we can potentially get Miles Morales in the Sony universe as a live action. I don't think, again, the Prowler more so is speculation. I don't think that he probably will be if they are going with a Sinister Six route. For the most part of being that, he's technically was introduced in the MCU. Yes, he's been in MCU. Yes, he's been in the Sonyverse with Across the Spider-Verse. But I really feel like everything also hinges based on how Beyond the Spider-Verse, the third installment, ends. Because if Miles ends up saving his father, saving everybody, and the timelines are stable, then we may end up having it where people can hop universes without it technically being, too bad. And of course, with things being talked about when it comes to Spider-Man 4, we gotta wonder, hey, Tom Holland is also also a prospect, because if anything, Sony still has the rights and still has it to where if they want to make a movie with Tom Holland in their created Spider-Verse universe, they can do it. There's already talks within Sony that they're going to make a Madam Web movie. They're going to make a Silver Sable movie. I believe they're going to also make a Black Cat movie. Venom 3 is still in the works. I don't know who the villain is going to be for Venom 3. But nevertheless, it's a likelihood that we're going to see more of Spider-Man, whether it be Miles Morales, whether it be Peter Parker, and whether it be a recast for Peter Parker, or unless they want to use one of the older versions. But nevertheless, that's where I see things going. Do I know who I have speculation and feelings on who could possibly be the villains or the other two members of the Sinister Six if that's where they're going? Yeah. I don't know if they're going to bring up other people. You still have Scorpion in the MCU. They didn't do much with Shocker, and you could still use Shocker if you really wanted to go that route. Scorpion is in the MCU, but I feel like he's going to be a part of Spider-Man 4, and that's a video I will make later, because there's still some things I'm thinking about, especially when it comes to Miles Morales live action. But nevertheless, I see Sony building a Sinister Six, and that's where everything is leading towards. And I want to know from you guys, what do you think? Do you think that this movie is something that's going to be good, bad? Are you excited for it? Are you mixed reviews? Are you just waiting for it to come on streaming services? Who do you want to see in this potential Sinister Six live action? At least members and all. whether they're already casted members or completely new Spider-Man villains. And third, who would you also want to see play Spider-Man against this version of Sony's Sinister Six? Do you want one of the older Spider-Mans, whether it be Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, or current Tom Holland in there? Do you want a casting for Miles Morales, and he be the person to go against the Sinister Six? Or would you like a completely different Spider-Man, whether it be a recasted Peter Parker, or would you like one of the other variants that we've seen in Across the Spider-Verse? Let me know in the comment section. But nevertheless, thank you all for listening. Please like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share it with your friends, and let me know what you feel. Without further ado, thank you all, and I'll see you on the next one.